Hey, Larry, can you start off by just giving a quick 60-second summary of who you are?
Yeah.
Totally fine if you go over.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was going to say. So I've been doing fitness forever, so it'll probably run a little bit longer, but it kind of led me through my fitness journey to this point with the equipment line. So when I was like 15, 16, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and Raynaud's phenomenon, a circulatory disorder. I was told that I'd never play sports, I'd never work out. And so as a young man, I did exactly what they told me not to do. I went in the garage, picked up this old rusty weight set that my dad had given me, and I started weight training. And through trial and error, I actually found a lot of success. I didn't have to take those medications, and I just totally fell in love with fitness. So at 16, I ended up getting my first job as a personal trainer at 24 Hour Fitness. I actually had to use a fake ID at the time because you had to be 18 at the time. So I ended up going into personal training at 24 Hour Fitness. I had a rocky future after that, where I ended up as a high school dropout. I ended up as a 2-time felon. I ended up in trouble. And so throughout that period of time, I was in and out of fitness. Fitness was always a part of my life, but I found other jobs that maybe paid more. And by the time about 2007 came around, I just realized that fitness is what I loved, whether I made money or not. Like, that's what I want to do. So, but I hated the corporate structure. I felt like they didn't focus on the clients or the workouts. So at that time, there wasn't really boot camps. CrossFit was like just getting started. So I just went to a park and I started a boot camp. I took my mom and my wife, Nadia, as my first 2 clients. We just went out to a park and I started training them there. And I just kind of learned along the way. And one of the things that was cool that kind of led me to this point with the equipment was, even back in those days, we'd be training at a park, and as other like boot camps would pop up, they would use dumbbells and have their clients bring dumbbells and things. And coming from, even at that time, I was already a bodybuilder, and I really saw the necessity for equipment. So I bought a U-Haul truck and I welded up these contraptions that were like stackable pull-up dip bars where I would attach cables to them and do other stuff. I bought like the Chuck Norris Total gyms that we would pull out of the back of the truck. So I was always trying to incorporate equipment. So I've always seen this value in equipment, even in this group training space that was like, this makes no sense. It costs money and you're toting all this crap around. And so from that time on, I was always waiting for people to accommodate this space. Who's going to create something that allows me to train my clients this way? And fast forward 15 years later, we're named the 3rd fastest growing privately held company in LA. We have franchises throughout the US. We just branched off into Germany. And still nobody's servicing this space. So it was, years back, probably 10 years ago, I came up with my first designs. I started filing a few patents. And probably 6 years ago, I created our first pieces of equipment that we put in our gyms. And so we created a handful of pieces of equipment that I did not sell to the public. I only used them for our gym use to be able to train our clients in a resistance training capacity in a greater way. And over a period of time, I started realizing that what we had created was something cool that fulfilled a need, but it didn't actually facilitate a lot of the accommodating factors: storage, the ability to set it up easily, the ability to move it easily. Like, we have a Smith machine functional trainer where you can hook this gliding bench to the cables and do hack squat and leg press, but the bench weighs like 2 tons. So moving it is a pain. So a lot of my fitness background kind of led me to this point where I wasn't a manufacturer. I was more of a customer or consumer first, and kind of created this line out of just a need because I didn't feel like anybody was servicing this niche.
Awesome. So in regards to your franchise, how large is your typical setup?
Yeah, so they range in size. Like, now we've gone into this more, we call it our micro models, which are more the size of a traditional boutique gym, which would be like, say, 3,000 square feet. Like, my original location was in a warehouse. We still have that location. That's our only privately owned, like our personally owned location. The rest are franchises. And that one's like 9,000 square feet. And they range. So we have some that are larger than ours. We have some that are smaller, but they're kind of, when you walk in, it feels like a hybrid model between a commercial gym and a boutique gym. So you see a lot of equipment, so it doesn't feel like a CrossFit, but it doesn't look like a commercial gym. So it's kind of like this in-between type of a vibe.
Awesome. I'd be really curious to hear just the general birth story of the Isolator. It seems like you're a very successful entrepreneur working in the training space. What did you see in the market or whatever that made you actually go for it in terms of creating a product? Because I think we both know that's not an easy task, and there's quite a bit of things that need to fall into place for it to happen.
Yeah. So mine, like I said, has been just this more of an itch and a desire to be able to offer value. When I started, like I said, I was a high school dropout. I didn't have business knowledge. So I kind of led from what do I know? And I knew training and value. So I always put myself in a client's position to say, what would make me choose this guy? Why would I go to this park instead of somewhere else? And so that's kind of how I've always led, even as I've learned business, is how to, like, in what way can I continue to add value to just make this a better decision for somebody? And so I was always brought back to this equipment thing that nagged me, is like, dude, I know that this would be so much cooler if I could do way more of these exercises that I do with a personal client. So 10 years ago, I came up with my first ideas. And like I said, about 6 years ago, is when I had traveled different countries. I had worked with different engineers, and brought these things to life. And it wasn't at all about money, because I didn't sell them. The designs that are in our gyms right now were only sold to our gyms. So it was not a profit model at all. It was simply a value model. And because it's something I wanted to do. This company is a huge passion project for me over anything. This means much more about developing the stuff I want to develop than making money. But it was similar in concept with the gyms. Was I really just want to create this stuff because I want to be proud of the model that I created. I want to be able to do stuff that I think is better. If I sit with a bunch of people and they introduce me to their friend and go, is yours the best group training space? I want to be able to say, yeah, and not say it just because I'm biased, but be able to say, look, I can do X, Y, and Z that nobody else is doing. I went across the country and I created and patented equipment that I made no money on, simply to be able to do it, to offer value. And so that's really where it started. I have a personal home gym that's about 2,000 square feet, and it looks like a kind of a small commercial gym. And as I would post that on my Instagram, I started getting a lot of people questioning because I have those few pieces that I originally designed in my home gym. So a bunch of people were hitting me up saying, why don't you sell that? Why don't you sell that? And this whole garage gym space didn't exist in 2007. Like, people had garage gyms, but the community wasn't like this. I didn't honestly even know about this community until I started creating this piece. And now I'm like, I love it. Everybody, they're all my people. They're like, dude, I'll take a 2x4 and a piece of conduit and do this. Like, that's been me forever. So that was kind of the idea, was like, all right, there's this need, let's create something. And then people started showing me like, dude, forget the money part of it. You're selfishly keeping this. The same need that you had. We all want this. We want this stuff that you're creating. So that honestly started in organic conversations through my personal Instagram. And it just kind of made me get to the point to go, you know what, this next stuff that I drop, I'm going to drop it to the public. And if everybody else is wanting this as bad as I've wanted it for 15 years, then I think this would be a cool venture to try to give it to everybody.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like you said, there is a really creative home gym group out there. They live on Instagram and Reddit and Discord. And if you're not there, you probably never heard of them. And that group probably grew 10x during COVID. It was really interesting to post your product and everybody just goes crazy. I think a lot of people are like, I don't trust this. I've never heard of them, because you've seen those companies that kind of just create something and go away. So I'd be curious to hear what are some of the primary questions and just general feedback you've received so far in terms of releasing the product kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, I even appreciate you guys had shared some of the stuff early on. Obviously not like advocating for it, but just even showing it was really cool to me.
Right.
And I've told other people, my franchisees and everybody else, honestly, at this point, if the company didn't go anywhere after this product and it just made these people happy and we launched this, I'd feel fulfilled, because the feedback I've gotten has been so great. I felt crazy because my franchisees love fitness, but they haven't been doing it as long as me. They don't have the same passion for equipment. So these years that I talk about the equipment on all these company calls, I can feel the vibe of them kind of like, this dude's just lost his mind with all this equipment talk. Like, he's constantly talking about it. So they appreciate it, but it's not the same passion. And I feel like this group of people, they're like the same thing. They're like, I've been waiting for this my whole life. And I'm like, me too. That's why I created it. So the feedback has been really good. But like you said, I think it's justly met with skepticism, because they don't know who I am. They don't know who the brand is. They don't know what's going on with it. So I expected that. And it's led us to an interesting place now, because the way that I see it is, I'm going to launch something and it's going to do okay pre-sale, which it's done better than I expected pre-sale. But what's going to really catch fire is depending on what people get when they put it in their hands. They're going to review it. They're going to talk about it. And if it's crap, it's crap. If it's not, it's going to blow up. And so people have hit me up with almost added skepticism because of the things that we keep adding to it, or like the fact that we dropped our price. Within 20 minutes of launching it, the feedback was like, hey, this price is too high for us. We can't afford it. It wasn't that I didn't feel that that it was warranted. It was normal margins for our type of business. It wasn't that I was overpricing it. But the reality is, if that's what they were saying, and it wasn't just we think it's too much, but we can't afford this, that doesn't do me any good. I need to be able to get it into the hands of the people that need to use it. So within 20 minutes, my sister, who's the VP of the company, pulled the car over. We were on a road trip and we were on the phone with the manufacturer. What if we order another container? What if we do this? How can we get the price down? And so we've continued doing that. We added an angled bumper to be able to start it under a different level of resistance. And so people are hitting me up like, what's the catch? Like, you guys are continuing to add stuff, but you're not charging more. And that almost makes us worry. Like, is this ever going to arrive? Are you just trying to get people to place an order? And the reality to me is common sense is, if somebody orders this unit and it doesn't have X, Y, and Z that's going to make it great, they're not going to talk about it as being great. So even if I don't make money on these pre-sale items, but I get it in the hands of people and they're like, dude, this thing kills it. This is what I've always wanted. I'll make up for it in the next, 10 years of sales.
Yeah, I think you're right. As I mentioned, like, this is one of those things where people have never had their hands on. But if you get a few positive reviews out there, I do think you're right. I think it's going to take off. I don't think there's anything as versatile as what you brought to the market. And that's exactly what people want. They want a complete gym within their power rack,
Yep.
And I think it's crazy that you created something like this. One thing that we haven't really done for anybody that's listening, we haven't said specifically what it was, but would you mind just pretending I've never heard of the product and explaining it to me?
Yeah. So basically what it is it's an attachment that's a small attachment you can pick up with one hand to put on. And then the rest of it is modular. You can put on the weight post, you can put on what type of arm you're going to use or the pad. And it depends on the exercise you're going to perform. And it does a myriad of those exercises, from preacher curls in different angles. So whether you like to do more of a vertical or a horizontal preacher curl, all different tricep variations, from a fixed arm overhead tricep to a horizontal. And then you can also angle the pad and pull a bench or a box up, do leg extensions, turn it around, do prone leg curls. You can put a barbell over your leg and do seated leg curls. We have a small pad that goes on it for you to do abductor, adductor, glute work, neck work. So it comes with the arm curl attachment, the small pad, and the long pad. And with those three attachments, I feel like it's almost every day I'm posting new variations of exercises. So it's really, I call it the Isolator because the length of the arm and the adjustability of all of it really caters towards isolated exercises as opposed to compound exercises. And it really does a lot of the compound or the isolated exercises that we don't get to do in a small PT, small gym, or garage gym setting.
Sounds like there's a lot of moving parts. How many prototypes have you gone through?
A lot of the prototypes that we end up going through are usually more rendering, where we find issues, or we end up having it like, we only had to go through 3 working prototypes. So a lot of them we'll render it. And then there's myself that comes up with the concept and basic engineering. Then I have my brother-in-law who had gone to school for a period of time for engineering and architecture, and he's also a graphic designer. So he makes the rendering. Then we send it to our actual engineer. So between the 3 of us, we indicate stuff. We'll just look at it all day too. We're into it. So like I'll be looking at it and go, you know what? I didn't think about this. If that changes here, that'll change this. So we got to change that. So we catch a lot of that stuff before it hits the prototype stage. The stuff now that we're catching even made us change the model isn't like necessary changes. It's more those like you're sitting on it. And there was one of the guys that commented who's big in the powerlifting community and wanted to show some heavy leg extension. So loaded it almost all the way up with the 45s, and it worked and everybody saw it work fine. But under that amount of load, it had more flexion than I wanted in that pad. And so it wasn't necessary. It still worked when we had tested it, but the more I used it under that heavy load, it bugged me. So we went back to the manufacturer, increased the rod diameter and all these other things to just help with that. So a lot of the changes that we've made now weren't necessarily maybe because we needed another prototype, but I think it's just more that as you use something more and more, stuff that maybe didn't bother you in the beginning or was okay starts to nag at you, and you go, you know what, no, we need to fix that. And so it's kind of got us to this place where we've made these final changes.
There are a good amount of all-in-one type units and then also attachments out there as well. There's always some sort of limitation, like anything like that. I'd be curious to hear what kind of limitations the Isolator might have.
Yeah. So like we had people that had commented asking, well, why do I have to pull a box or a bench over to sit on for leg extensions when there might be this unit that has a seat? And so there's those give and takes that I've given examples of on the page, is like, we have a design now and we'll probably drop it as a choice where they can pick this seat pad or the other one, where it is a pad that can adjust. You pull a lever and it's very much like a seat at a gym on a piece of equipment, and you can adjust it, and that can be used as an actual seat where you don't have to pull a bench over. The problem is, like you said, the give and take is it costs a fair amount more. And so I think that all of us, we want more until we realize what the cost is. And we're like, oh, okay, maybe I'll just pull a box over. So that is one of the things where it's able to do more than any of these other attachments. But say if you do have to pull a box over to do a leg extension where there might be something you don't, that can kind of foreshadow on people like, well, it doesn't have that. So I would say that would be one of the things, is that you have to pull the box over for a leg extension and not just sit directly on the seat. The other thing I think is just the fact that it's just a lever system at all, is there's going to be some level to where you're only going to have so much range of tension, So I think that playing with that as the main source is something that you're just always going to have some shortcomings to. The one thing that we are doing is making an adapter to where you can actually hook it up to a cable system. So we have it now where we've been trialing it on our Smith Functional, and that'll be something to where anybody that's able to do that does really, in my opinion, the cable resistance kind of eliminates most of the issues that you could potentially have, which is pretty cool. The other stuff does feel really good. Like myself and the person that you'll see in a lot of the videos, the taller guy with dark hair, he's my fitness manager of our original location, and he helps me with a lot of the stuff, and he's a longtime bodybuilder too. And we're very particular about, like you mentioned, is how does stuff feel? Where do we have to make compromises? We really didn't want it to be in the feel. So like, if it was in the setup or if it was in the cost, those were the areas we were more okay with. We really didn't want to get on a preacher curl and it just not feel good, because we've had so many of those where we've tried to bring them into the gym and you just don't want to use them at all. To me, it's not even a compromise. It's just not worth it at all. One of the things I mention a lot in ours is we have these pressure plates on each side of the carriage where you can tighten it down. And then we have these counter torque screws that are on the leg extension. That stuff, because to me, you get on a preacher curl that's shaky, and it's hard to keep a contraction because you're shaking around with this thing and it's binding up or whatever. So instead of bushings, we used sealed bearings, the highest quality bearings. So little stuff like that I don't think people even a lot of the time think about or care about is like, okay, that unit's a little cheaper. Yeah, it's got crappy bushings and that's not going to feel as good, and it definitely isn't going to last as long. So I really don't feel that our compromise was in the function of these movements, because they do feel really good. But the compromise would probably be down the line more in price. If somebody wants to get the seat that's more accommodating, that's going to cost more. So somebody's going to have to give there. And I do think just the lever system alone, anybody that's used lever stuff, you just only have such a range that feels really good. And you're going to have to compromise at the bottom or the top if you go too low or too far.
Makes sense. The perks of the lever, though, is that wide variety of people can use it, right? You would say that if someone's buying this for their family home gym, like maybe the wife, the husband, and maybe a teenager could all use it?
Yeah. I think that most people that get on it are going to be like, this feels really good. And I mean, stuff that I don't think a lot of people think about is people were asking, why do you have it on a front pin instead of the side pin? And that front pin allows the resistance to be directly carried over the bearing, over the hinge point, over the post, so that all of that weight is distributed evenly. You have no shake, and it's a very smooth range of tension. Where off to the side, we still have that side weight pin that works good for, say, like a prone leg curl that has a longer range of tension. So it does give you that little bit extra range. But I think those are things that I think that regular manufacturers don't. They'll just put a front pin or a side pin. Like, it either works, it works however it works. Each of these things, we want it to make sense for the right reasons. And the front loaded pin was smoother, and it also gave a better tension at the bottom. So the bottom point started to catch that resistance a little earlier. So we just felt like for most of the movements, it made more sense. So yeah, I think that a family that gets on it is going to just feel like this feels really good. And I really do. I stand behind the fact that it's going to feel very comparable to a standalone unit in most of the major movements. You're not going to notice a big difference. And that was kind of what a big pride was, is you can get on it and go this. And that's like our fitness manager, he's crazy about that stuff. Like, he has one preacher curl he likes to use, like, that feels good. So like, I knew when we bring it to him, like, he's going to tell me it doesn't feel good or not. And we were all really happy with the ability to do what it can do, be so versatile, and still feel pretty true to the movements that it's trying to do.
I think one negative to having a lot of rack attachments like jammer arms and monoliths and et cetera is the setup time can be a little bit of a hindrance, and you might just not find yourself ever moving it. I'd be curious to hear how long it takes to adjust.
Yeah. So that's a lot of people were asking that. So that's why I had shot one on our Instagram that shows, I think it went up in like 36 seconds, which wasn't me like rushing. I was like holding the pieces up to show them to the camera. So like, it was at a normal pace that someone would probably set it up. Now, of course, those pieces are sitting next to me. If you store them across your garage or something, of course, those are going to take more time. But there was two things that we considered. One is, again, is if it's a smaller individual that's not as strong, somebody who say you have your wife is just getting into fitness, is it going to be something that's going to hurt her setting up or too cumbersome? It's, a lot of us don't think of the fact that these attachments, even if they don't weigh a lot, they're awkward weight. So somebody who's not real strong is still awkward. So that's why we spent the extra money making it to where everything comes off and it's just this carriage that goes on. So I picture somebody in that position wanting to strip it down because it's so easy and they're pull knobs. So you don't have to line pins up or anything. It's not like it adds a ton of time to strip it down. They'll just set it up that way and they'll put all the pieces on it. And then I picture somebody like yourself or myself, I'm going to leave the weight arm on. I might even leave the attachment arm on because it doesn't add a ton of extra weight and it makes it a lot faster. And I'll pull the pad off and just throw it on there. So it allows you to kind of leave it as set up or detach it as much as needed based on how strong you are, how comfortable you are to set it up. So again, is none of it, all of the stuff isn't lining pins up or anything. You pull the knob and throw it in and it just pops in. So we used a hex port system that we ended up patenting that is everything works off of that. So not just this unit, but future units to come. All of our stuff, instead of sleeve in sleeve and find a pin, to me, it's like you're always trying to wrestle to get that sleeve in. You're always trying to find where the pin goes, and that adds a lot of time. So this is we pull a pin and you just stick this hex port in there and it pops in. So the stuff goes on really quickly. So I think that the ability to strip it down or leave it assembled is gonna help certain people set it up or have it more quickly or easily set up.
I definitely see a world where instead of buying for a home gym, where instead of buying a number of pieces, like a number of different strength equipment pieces, you end up just purchasing one rack for squat, bench, etc. with the barbell, and then another rack to just load up with accessory items like this.
Yeah. I mean, ours is, we say, obviously like Steve Jobs used the word end-to-end compatibility, where like all of their accessories work with their stuff. So obviously he's tokened that, but piggybacking off of that is the same concept is if somebody buys the Isolator and my next unit has the ability to facilitate those things, it will go on there. You don't have to buy the new version. So my idea was if somebody sticks with us and they're buying our stuff is you're going to need less and less because these units are going to go together. The next thing that goes here, you just pull this off and slide this in. You get to keep the carriage or you get to use these things. So my idea is that it would be very much like that, is instead of buying 10 different things, each one of ours will go with the next. And each one, since it does what the other one does, is you need less and less. And they just basically interchangeably do the different movements that you want to do. So yeah, I really don't feel that people have approached this space with what people need, but I definitely don't think they've seen it. They've forecasted it in a way to where I know as a gym owner, if somebody was telling me, if you buy this today and I come out with this, you can put it on that and this can go on that. So instead of us, like people were asking about the cable version, will you create a cable version? We just created a cam system and it'll be an attachment. So you don't have to buy a whole new Isolator for a cable system. You can just buy the attachment. So that's kind of the vision that we see, is if whoever purchases from us, they want to stick with us because they know we're going to keep creating stuff that's going to make it cheaper and easier and more space saving for them to facilitate the next need that we drop. That
is really good to know, because there's definitely a lot of people have the mindset that if a certain company drops a version 1, they're just going to wait till year 2 or year 3 whenever the company drops the version 2 after they got some of the kinks out.
Yep.
So good to know. So just a few more questions, but if somebody did want to order, what is the price right now and what is entailed with the pre-order?
Yeah, so it's $6.99 right now, and that comes with the three attachments. Then it's depending on where they're at is shipping. So that can be one thing, is we don't have distribution set up yet. So in different countries, that can make it difficult. So they can put in there and calculate what their pricing would be on the site. So we do have some people that are more hesitant that live in other countries where the price is rough. So that'll still be something that we'll have to figure out as distribution. But once they place their order, we're like just over a week away from ending pre-sale, maybe just under. So we had a certain amount of units and a certain amount of time that we wanted to do it, and we're pretty close to that. So once pre-sale ends, it's around 90 days from then that we'll start shipping them out. So, and I've been pretty like transparent with that to everybody, is saying that's like give or take a little here or there, is it'll be around 90 days until we get them, and then we'll ship them out. But we'll keep in touch with those people that have ordered and let them know along the way, like what things look like. and kind of keep them in the loop of where we're at with things.
Yeah, I think 90 days is pretty standard these days.
Yeah.
And then lastly, any other products in the works that you're hoping to bring to market soon, or is it really just optimize this one?
Yeah, no, like I said, we've been filing patents and building designs, and we have 9 designs that have gone through initial phases to some stage. So we have 2 of them that are in prototype right now, and we have other ones that are basically completed as far as rendering and just have to go through the stage. So we're looking at something, and again, it depends on how shipping goes and how these things go. But if things run smooth, we'd like to see new items dropping every 60 days or less. And each one of the designs, really, it's not like a piggyback off of somebody else. It's like, oh, okay, they kind of did what so-and-so did. I feel like each one of our designs is something completely different than anybody has done, and that people are going to see as a completely standalone item that they haven't seen in any way. Even we have a belt squat that we're dropping, a belt squat attachment that just doesn't look or function in any way like any of the other belt squat attachments do. So we have that dropping, and we have one that's a rear chain developer that does more rear chain exercises than anything on the market. And that's one of the ones that we've had patents that were filed years ago. And that'll be one of the next ones that will drop. So that one's a little larger unit. It's a standalone, but almost any rear chain exercise, from your calves up to your neck, it can pretty much perform in one unit. So it's like an ultimate rear chain developer. So those are going to be a few of the next ones that we're going to drop.
Very cool. Well, that's all I have. Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, I mean, that's, I love being on and just being able to talk about it a little bit. And I think it gives everybody kind of an opportunity to just kind of see what we're about. But yeah, I mean, this is first and foremost, like I've told everybody, it's a passion project. I love the company, and this isn't something that I have to do for the money. I really want to do it. And there were some people that when we had first put the price up, they had said really harsh, like they were cursing and leaving negative stuff on the page. So I deleted them, and one of them emailed me, and I was just honest with them and said, listen, man, honestly, like, I just don't need to deal with that, and I'm all good vibes, but I'm just not. And like, if I lost your business, I'm sure there's other companies you can curse at. I don't need the money for this, and I'm always going to be nice, but I'm also not going to deal with that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the vibe of the company is I'm always going to be super cool to everybody. I absolutely love doing this, but I think they're going to get a different vibe of like, I'm not going to be trying to chase people's business or anything either. Like, this is going to be like, I love the gym community and all these people, but I feel like there's definitely a type of dynamic in the industry where there's a lot of like craziness people are saying to these manufacturers, and the manufacturers are just like, oh, whatever you say. And like, that's just not going to be my vibe. I'm just going to be like, yeah, no, never mind. So
yeah, I get it. There's a lot of passionate home gym owners that I'm sure will say some nice things and say some mean things. So
yeah, so I mean, and I think that's one of those things where everybody looks and you find whatever company you align with more. I think now, even after COVID and how hard things are now, is people are going to tighten up their strings with who they give their money to. I want it to be a good product, but I want to be what you're about. And I think there will be some people that really do want to be able to say whatever they want to say to a manufacturer. And I don't have any harm with that. I'm just not that manufacturer. You know what I mean? I'll always be super nice, but I'm always going to expect that a level of respect, because again, I don't have to deal with that. And this is just something that I love doing and want to do and want to provide a great service. And if you feel like beating me up or you hate me or whatever, like, we just don't need to probably buy stuff from each other, So
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to be, like you said, there's a lot of passionate people, and those people that are passionate in the positive way has been overwhelming, because it's made this even more fun. I already knew I was going to love this, but it's honestly 10 times it, because I'm feeling that reciprocation of passion of what the company can do. And I've shown a little behind the scenes of a few of the items to come, and like, people were blown away the same way I feel about the stuff. So that stuff excites me more than the rest of it. So I'm excited to see how people react when we actually drop it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think overall seems like a nice match between the people that are building out their home gyms and you finally discovering us.
Yeah.
In 2022.
It only took me 15 years. I'm a slow learner, but I'll pick it up eventually.
Well, we appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me. Can you just give your plug and tell people where to find you?
Yeah, so just Bulletproof Fitness Equipment is going to be on Instagram. You guys check that out. That's where all the videos are going to be. We have our links on there to purchase and pre-order. My personal Instagram is Hardcore Fit Larry, and anybody that has questions can ask on either. And that's a big thing that I try to do through this page. I feel there's a lot of people that own companies and there isn't a face, and so it's easy to hide behind. And with mine, I want people to know, like, I'm here and I stand behind what we're doing. And if you have questions or concerns, you're not going to have to hide behind a customer service line. You know exactly who I am as an individual. So anybody that has questions can ask on either page, and I'll do my best to try to get back to everybody.
Sounds good. Well, that's going to do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake. I appreciate it, brother.
You got it.
Everybody.